minute. We will start in about 30 seconds. All right, so we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to our Community of Practice webinar series. And today we're going to be talking about Hidden Talent, a workforce development program in Northeast Wisconsin. And we have a fantastic panel here today. I'm going to introduce the panelists, and I'm going to ask them to, as I introduce them, to unmute themselves and share a little bit about their work. So I'm going to just be really high level, but would love to learn kind of their work and also what motivated them to actually start this project. So first off, I will introduce Rebecca. Rebecca is the VP of Talent Development at New North, and she works has worked in this project from the very beginning. I'll give a little bit about her. She's a VP of Vice President of Talent Development, the Regional Marketing and Economic Development Agency, which is New North, for 18 counties in Northeast Wisconsin. She's held this position since Jan 2021. Welcome, Rebecca.
Great. Thanks, David. Happy to be here.
Awesome.
Do you want me to go a little bit more into myself?
Sure.
Or
Yes,
okay.
Please go ahead.
So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to be able to talk about our partnerships that we are working on. As David said, I work with New North, which is one of 9 regional economic development organizations in the state of Wisconsin. And we have the 18 counties in Northeast Wisconsin. And my role as part of the Vice President of Talent Development is really to look at what are those opportunities that we have to address gaps in our area that would help with talent development, and then also to reach out and work with our community partners and look for new and innovative ways for us to address talent. So we're going to talk today about some of the things that we are doing collectively to address the digital equity issue, and specifically how we can bring more digital literacy trainings to our communities, especially those communities that are not connected to traditional workforce or talent or service resources. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So next up, we have Vicky Patterson, who is the Executive Director for the Bay Area Workforce Development Board. Vicky has extensive background that includes nonprofit management, grant making, resource development, volunteer management, and fostering partnerships focused on results. Welcome, Vicky.
Hi, thank you. Glad to be here. So I am with the Bay Area Workforce Development Board. So it is one of 11 workforce development boards in the state of Wisconsin and really falls within New North's region. They have 17 counties, we have the 11 counties. So a lot of variance between rural communities to more urban communities, and looking at the needs within those in those counties, and how different they can be regarding workforce development and the issues that are faced. So we became involved in this grant primarily as the funder of the grant through some ARPA funds that we received and a grant that the state of Wisconsin had. The grant itself wanted to kind of focus more on transitional jobs, but we really wanted to look at the digital skills piece of things, and looking at that from more of a foundational skills approach for people that are a little, could be left behind and are likely to be more left behind as the world continues to change, and then also some upskilling for current workers. So that was really our focus. And so we were really pleased when New North and Abaxent, came forward with this proposal to target populations in our community that were most impacted by the pandemic, and start to lift that up and build that foundation in the community. So that's how we got involved.
Welcome. We're looking forward to this conversation today. And next up, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sabrina Robbins, also known as Dr. Brie. Dr. Brie is the Chief Operating Officer of Abaxent, a 100% African-American owned, women-owned technology company. Dr. Brie also works with African Heritage and Abacor. Dr. Brie, I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit more about your work.
Sure. Thank you for having me here, and I'm really excited to also share the stage with our partners. I'm wearing multiple hats today, and I'm the Chief Architect of the Boost solution. Boost stands for Building Outstanding Opportunities for Sustainable Talent. And we're really here to leverage our collective experience. I have over 25 years of workforce solutions and coming from major corporations doing that. And in addition, I serve on the board of directors for African Heritage, Inc. And what I've learned through a combination of my corporate experience and also being a nonprofit is the value of grassroots recruiting. What we learned during COVID is that there's a vast population of our most vulnerable workforce that are left out of the formal systems. And we found that out in COVID. And as a result, we said, let's continue to work with this group and also see what else is needed. It came high on the list that digital literacy was needed. Without foundational digital literacy skills, they are not able to apply for jobs or even find out that jobs are available. So as an opportunity to deal with not only people of color, but those that are in the most need of poverty, the lowest poverty levels, had the less accessibility to digital skills training. And so we put together this solution, had the opportunity to partner with New North to leverage their vast knowledge of the region itself, Bay Area workforce development with the resources and the technical resources to link more people to utilize that. And so New Boost, New Northeast Wisconsin Boost, Building Opportunities for Outstanding Sustainable Talents came forth. We talk a lot about leveraging technology, but we're really into the people business. And the technology is used to foster relationships so that we can be in community. And that means going to get the talent. We're dealing with people that do not have resumes. And so we have to go and get that talent and have the skill to go and interact with people where they are. And so New Boost is a grassroots initiative to offer free, basic online training to our most vulnerable population where they are. And that also means bringing new partners to the table that typically are not there, such as our churches and some of our local businesses where our target population frequent, so they can get services and not be fatigued running around town trying to find some place where we can really be where they are.
Fantastic. And I am so excited for this discussion, not just for why this was done, but also the lessons learned and why this work is so hard to do. So I'll first start, Rebecca, with you and kind of understand New North's motivation. Like, how did this project come about? I know Vickie talked a little bit about kind of as a funder, their perspective, but New North kind of taking the lead on putting this project together. What was your vision in helping Northeast Wisconsin and workforce development in the area?
Yeah, thanks for that question, David. Really, we're very fortunate in the New North region to have a lot of partners and a lot of corporations that see, that long-term, the big picture of wanting to make sure that there is talent that's going to meet, not only current needs, but those needs of the future. One of our partners has been Microsoft. We have a Tech Spark region in New North, one of the very first ones that Microsoft launched 5 years ago. And through our partnership with them, we have, made aware of the growing digital equity gaps that we have. So how can we, as an organization that's serving multiple counties, we work with local partners, both from an equity side and then within the nonprofit and workforce development space. How can we serve as a convener to bring those partners together and look at what are, as Dr. Brie mentioned, how do we bring in organizations or people that don't necessarily interact with other workforce trainers? So we have this opportunity to, one, be more aware of it through the partnership we have with Microsoft. If anyone is wondering, what are those opportunities and how can you learn more about your own digital opportunity gap? There's a great resource. Microsoft and the National Digital Inclusion Association has a digital equity scorecard. And I'll drop that in the chat when I'm done chatting here, but people can go, you can look at your state specifically, but you can see, right? We have nearly 33% of those unemployed in the state of Wisconsin would not be qualified to apply for nearly 75% of the open jobs in our state. And that's that should have red flags for everybody. So how do we look at that from a perspective as a regional economic development organization? How do we support our existing businesses? How do we create an environment where new businesses want to come, where they're moving here or growing and starting here? And how do we make sure that we're, part of the solution on that talent development scale? As Dr. Brie said, not leaving those who are behind, right? Vickie, I think you mentioned it too. If you don't have access to it, you're going to be continuously and more accelerated, right? How quickly you're left behind. So how can we stop that and bring people together?
Yeah, it's such a interesting topic. That statistic that you mentioned is fascinating.
Yeah,
that there are jobs and then there are job seekers, and there's a mismatch between both of those organizations. And a lot of times, just because you put them two together doesn't mean that they are now eligible for jobs. A lot of the times they don't qualify for the jobs. The trust is not there. They wouldn't even apply for those jobs, right? So Vickie, bringing you into the conversation here, as you look at the landscape here, like what were the critical stakeholders that you brought together as you thought about creating this initiative? So we'll start at the top and then we'll kind of go into the mechanics of it. But at the starting point, when you thought about this project, bringing in New North, et cetera, what was kind of some of your thinking there?
Well, really, actually, New North just applied, submitted a proposal with this idea. I think where we changed the focus is when it came to us, it was more focused on transitional jobs, and we instead turned that around and made it a little more focused on digital skills and hidden talent. So I think our role in that was that bringing this collaboration together. Initially with the proposal was really New North in a backend doing that, and then us kind of supporting it throughout that. But I did want to add something on to just what you guys were talking about before around, kind of matching the skills with the talent. And, the importance of foundational digital skills is the constant, because there was a statistic that I had from the Governor's Council that was like 5 years ago that said by 2035, 75% of the jobs that exist in 2035 do not exist today. That since has changed. And so within this last year, it's by 2030, 80% of the jobs that exist. Because of
ChatGPT. It's because of AI.
Because of change. And so we're going to be training people for jobs, and we don't even know what those jobs are yet, and we're training people for jobs today that may not exist in 5 years. So there's really a challenging time, but that one constant is the foundational digital skills. People will need those. And so I feel like, an investment in that today will help people weather that change a little better, while we all try to grasp on what is it that people are going to change, how can we skill them up quickly, how can we help with that disruption, but that foundational digital skills piece is just the constant. So
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
wanted
Yep.
to also share in what Vickie is saying. And we're right now witnessing a change of what counts as foundational digital skills. Dave, you mentioned ChatGPT. We are fastly moving where it's going to be very important that we all know the word prompts. And what are the right prompts? How to look for jobs, even how to prepare for jobs now, and how we deliver training. And so as we speak, we're probably having to redefine what is foundational. Before it was, oh, we have to make sure that they know how to use computers and stop doing business on telephones, on your cell phone, or what is social media, and we'll still need to do that. But I am talking to people every day about what's the proper prompts and how to get information that they need fast, right? To be able to help them build resumes, how to prepare for interviews and all of that. So we're experiencing change in real time. And unless you have access to the resources that New North, African Heritage, and Bay Area, you will be left even further behind. So it's a very urgent need that we are all experiencing. And I'm going to say it's a global impact.
and one of those jobs that didn't exist 2 years ago is a prompt engineer. That's a job. Yep.
Yeah.
And that didn't exist. So
Yeah.
what's going to exist in 2 years, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Rebecca, did you want to say something too? Okay. Yeah. So, just going on that same vein, and Dr. Brie, I'll bring you into this picture as well, to kind of highlight that there is a whole kind of aspect of community to this. So we understand the problem, we understand how difficult it is, but then there's also a trust factor that you can't just show up in these communities and say, I've got a solution, now you got to trust me, right? Or I got a solution, now you got to follow me, right? So, and some of this trust is built in decades. So you got to partner with people that already exist in these communities, right? So talk to us a little bit about the mechanics of how do you actually build trust in these communities. And if you have a great idea, this is a wonderful program, how do you actually bring this to life?
Absolutely. I'm going to put on my African Heritage hat, board member hat. African Heritage is a small nonprofit organization based in Northeast Wisconsin. And it's been active for 25 years in the region. And I say 25 years because it's been 25 years at the grassroots level serving the Black community. The mission is advancing Blacks and African Americans. So when you say decades, it really is decades of serving people where they are and their needs. So it's been very nice. Typically, when it's a small grassroots, many people are not aware of their work. So, and you just keep serving this group. And as you bring in initiatives, you're having to talk to them multiple times. So it isn't a one and done, or where we can show up and just set up a table for one day and say, here are all our services. So we're serving and doing major events, typically cultural events, but also being there day to day, helping them navigate through life. What we learned is, yes, the grassroots organizations are very good, but boy, isn't it nice to partner with Microsoft and give us access to some of the larger services that's been going on in the region. The three of us have been together for decades, right? Serving, but probably inside of 5 years, really having an understanding of what we can do together. Having that conduit from larger established organizations into the community, that is African Heritage role. where we can go back and forth, share the resources, and keep saying over and over again, you're not alone, that there are larger resources available, and to have the trust of Bay Area, Microsoft, and New North to be able to carry that message back to communities that all of us have a vested interest and desire in helping. Building that trust to be able to receive it, and also being able to translate that information in a way that is meaningful for the communities that we're serving.
Yeah. Rebecca, jump in.
Great, thanks. Just kind of building off what Dr. Brie said there is, that disruption that happened during COVID, there's a lot of, not so great things, but I think, one of the silver linings is that it really helped us find new ways to connect with people, right? So while New North has been around for almost 20 years and African Heritage has been around for 25, and Vickie, I don't know how long Bay Area has been around, but right, for a couple decades as well, right? Like that interaction and those integrations weren't happening, right? We were kind of working towards similar goals, but in our own, pathways and not bringing it together. And what COVID demonstrated is that there's things where you need to come together and work on those collaboratively. So really having these new opportunities with new partners, right? There's this learning curve that we've been going through as partners working, and then working with those other extended partners outside, right? That we're trying to bring into the grant activities, has also demonstrated, right? Like there's different ways to interact, and people are learning new things, and we're learning new things. And Vickie, I would, even guess that you guys as a workforce board are seeing, right, there's different ways to go about it. And there's also some more challenges then, right? We've hit a few barriers that we didn't anticipate, as part of our grant deliverables, which, kind of set us back a little bit as we learn more about, learning from Dr. Brie and African Heritage on that grassroots engagement, building that trust. You have a lot of interest in it, but getting people from interest to, action is a little bit longer of a runway.
Yeah. And Vickie, I'll let you jump in to also elaborate a little bit about those challenges, right? Like in terms of assumptions on what success would look like and the timeline for that success versus when you actually go to do the program, and you see that either the gap is really large or the ability to draw a straight line between I have a great solution to I have people that want the great solution might not be a linear path.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things that is a barrier is just the nature of the funding. And so, working with more grassroots organizations, and I agree with both Rebecca and Dr. Brie that that's where you're going to really reach those, individuals through trusted organizations. And they are largely smaller community organizations and grassroots. And so the funding that we often get through workforce boards has a lot of paperwork, it has a lot of questions that it asks people, and they don't know us, and they wonder why you're asking that information. And that paperwork alone is a barrier to serving populations. So we wonder, previously, 6 years ago before COVID, why aren't we serving those populations? Are we not doing outreach well? Are we not doing, even if you are reaching them, it's still a barrier. So I think just the nature of the funding and what type of funding and what those requirements are play a big role in serving individuals. And so just being cognizant of that, I think is important. And I think this grant had a couple of different elements to it. So they kind of had the capacity building piece of it, where they were designing the system and all of that. This funding is a little less of a barrier for that part of it. But then when you're working with the individuals, it becomes very noticeable. So I think that is just, a barrier that has to be worked through or be aware of it and have other funding, because it creates obstacles that you have to work through, and takes that time. So
yeah. And I'll just share, and I'd love to have the other panelists jump in, but one of the things that we learned through PPP during COVID was that sometimes the program design itself, it automatically excluded some people just from the design of the program, and not intentionally. When the SBA rolled out these programs, they were looking to help people. But when they rolled it out, they realized that the people that didn't have financial statements instantly were excluded from the process that they were trying to do. And then the people that applied for early funding were people they didn't actually want to fund, but because they're the ones that had the paperwork and had the trusted banking relationship, they were getting PPP in the millions, when the people they designed it for didn't have the trusted banking relationship and didn't have the financial statements, and instantly were excluded from the very design of what they were trying to solve for. And sometimes you only learn that after you've rolled it out, and then they said in second round, we actually will eliminate those questions, and we will actually eliminate the need to go through a bank. And then they were able to get to the grassroots and get to the people. And without that initial learning, it wasn't possible to actually get to the right people. Yeah.
And I also want to say the notion of earning while you're learning. When you're working with those that are impoverished, when it comes to training opportunities, there should be a stipend there. Their needs are often immediate. And by the time you fill out the paperwork for the referral or whatever, they slide even more into a state of emergency, and whether it's facing evictions, a food scarcity, or loss of transportation to get to the job, to get there, and to be able to offer stipends while learning could go a long way into not only supporting the recruit, but also getting them through the program for a positive exit and completion as well. So I just wanted to throw that. I'm starting to see in other areas that I work in that they're offering a stipend to go along if they're actively participating in the programs.
It's interesting points. It's almost like saying, like, if you want to train the person, you got to first make sure that they're fed so they can actually focus on the learning and not focus on their growling stomach, right? It's almost like you got to satisfy the need that's there when you show up.
Well, and most people do get paid while they're learning. I have a 19-year-old, she works at the mall. And when it's time for them to do training, they get paid for that.
Yeah.
And so we're taking people that have even less access than my 19-year-old, asking them to be in training and get no payment. That could be something to look at, that most people do get paid something for while they're training.
Yeah. And to be fair, I think, Vickie's point about some grant funding, we had originally hoped to do some stipends, and I know there are some support services that are available for us to be able to bring in with the participants that we're working with. There's just that process piece that goes with it. So, as people, if they're listening and as they're thinking through, how do I do something like that? It's understanding some of that flexibility and, some of that diversification of funding for a program that you're looking at. So, there are some structures that go into place, and we're extraordinarily grateful to Bay Area for giving us this chance to try something new and to look at different ways that we can serve different populations within our region. And as we grow forward, it's understanding that some of the funding that we need to carry on this program, might need to come from a different source. That federal funding has federal rules and regulations, and that's part of that process that you need to be mindful of. But being able to then find some of those other community partners or community funding sources that will allow you a little bit more of that flexibility on how to support the whole, like the holistic piece of that approach is really important as well.
Yeah, and we experienced that for New Boost Hidden Talent. African Heritage, with the support of Microsoft, helped us get a multi-year capacity building and digital literacy funding from our local community foundation. So we were able to add those resources to the programs. So we had a church where it had a significant African-American population. We were able, African Heritage was able to use its funds from a different source to buy computers. So now that church has computers and is now a satellite site. We were able to do the same thing for another organization called We All Rise that has a transitional housing. They were in need of funding. So we were able to, with the support of New North and Microsoft, be able to get funding from that from the regional foundation and provide computers for that site as well. So the application partnerships, there's value in partnering with the smaller grassroots because they have access to additional funding to serve a population that we all have in common and care about.
And I was just going to say, you know, the importance and I think the learning that takes place, but that to take a blanket, you know, and put it across when we're serving populations that this works or this doesn't work. So in a lot of our other grants, we have incentives. People can get incentives when they complete things, when they do things, hardly used. But in working with on this project and, you know, listening to Dr. Brie, listening to some other organizations that work with refugees, that's not the case. They're really, really important. And not maybe an incentive, but a stipend, you know, for training, for learning, time, transportation is likely important, things like that. But I think, you know, just being really cognizant of when you go to implement a program or like go to, you know, fund a program, that just that blanket when you're serving a lot of different individuals, you know, to be careful and cautious of that and have that build in as much flexibility, I guess, as possible.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you all the same question after this, which is to tell us one story of an individual. You don't have to tell the name or anything, but one story that stood out to you through this project. But while you're all thinking, Rebecca, I'm going to ask you a question focused specifically around economic development and the role of a project like this in driving economic activity in the community, right? Given that this can, you know, be something that can be taken to other communities. What's the ROI, big picture ROI? And of course, all of you are welcome to jump in on that as well. And then I'm going to giving you like some heads up on, tell us a story that stood out to you after this. So yeah, Rebecca, tell us a little bit about the economic impact of something like this.
Yeah, it's a great question, David. And I don't know that I can give you like a true ROI score right now.
Just a big picture. Yeah.
Right. But, you know, in today's labor market, workforce development is economic development. So if we don't have the workforce to meet the needs of our business community, right, then they're not going to be successful. They're not going to be able to churn their products, their information. And as you look towards how do we address, even if every individual in the state of Wisconsin who is unemployed was matched up with every open job with all of the right skills, we'd still have over 100,000 openings in the state of Wisconsin that weren't filled, right? So how are you addressing that pure demographic, you know, gap? It's technology, it's automation, right? So the workplace itself is changing. So the program, the New Boost program, is addressing that very foundational, you know, computer skills. So people who may not have had that opportunity, who may have been doing the same job for a number of years, but now there's that new equipment and that equipment is more automated. Now we're seeing that having this opportunity, this ability to provide those trainings is going to help them not only retain existing jobs, but maybe move up into new jobs then as well. So if we're thinking about it from we talk a lot about the ALICE population. So for those who aren't familiar, ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. So our individuals who are employed but not making enough money for their household to be able to meet their very basic needs. So some of those individuals might be working 2 or 3 jobs. How can something like this program then let them maybe get that bump up at their one job where that, then frees them to not have to work 3 jobs. Now they can spend more time with their family, their quality of life has improved, right? Their ability to do their job has improved, right? You're not as tired, all those different things that come through it. But when you look at it from an economic development standpoint, then it's, being able to, demonstrate that your region, your state, your community has the services in place to support those skilling and that upskilling. And then that's going to drive that you're going to have that talent that are going to at least meet those, very basic skills that you need to come into that workforce, be able to train into those other, very specific parts of that and continue on. So, how do we talk to site selectors? How do we make sure that we're meeting, existing needs? But then how are we also making sure from a community perspective that we're taking care of people? Because as Dr. Brie mentioned, right, chances are that computer skills are not the only, challenge that they are facing throughout the course of their life, right? So how can we help them not only with that skills training, but be able to connect them with those other community-based resources to meet other demands in their life?
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to do round robin and ask everybody to share a story. So Vickie, I'll start with you. From what you've, people have shared with you and what you've seen, tell us a success story that you've seen through this program.
So you started with the wrong person, because I don't have kind of that personal connection to the program participants to really see that.
Yeah.
So
have you heard?
I could have found one. We have a person who gets all the case notes and things like that in our office that probably sees it, but I don't.
Vickie, do you think though from
I
a
have
success
Vickie's
story?
I have Vickie's story and how she's helped the program and she doesn't even know it.
Really?
Oh,
DOC?
Yeah.
So, DOC?
So this is about connecting. And Vickie took time out and she recommended that I speak with someone that could help us with second chancers. We were struggling with the recruit. And Vickie said, I'd like to introduce you to someone. We were at the New North Summit and I followed up. And now that organization is filling a big gap that we had in our program, because now not every group has the appropriate volunteers or resources to fill the need and be able to meet that target population where we are. So now I call them returning citizens. We now have, through Vickie, an organization that raise their hand and say, our clientele can really benefit from that. Thank you, and we would like to participate and be a part of Boost. So you can have impact. It doesn't mean that you're working directly with people, but this is about being part of an ecosystem and we don't all fill the same role. So Vickie, you've had a very good and real impact on this program for us to help and have the opportunity to connect with an organization that's skilled and willing to help returning citizens and give us access to returning citizens that want, need, and deserve a boost in life. So I just wanted to say thank you right here on that.
Well, thank you.
I had Vickie's story.
And
then
well,
I
was going to actually say I don't have a specific story, but my story would be the hope for working with our justice involved clients, because we have some programs also that we're working with individuals when they're in the institutions that come out. And if you're in an institution for 8 years, 10 years, and you come out, even driving a car can be a challenge. So those foundational skills. So my story was going to be, that I have a hope, my success is that we can connect our justice involved individuals. And so that was good to hear.
That's fantastic. That's real change right there. Okay, so Dr. Brie, what's your story?
So I had Vickie's story. My story is actually interacting with program participants. So I want to say, I went in with a mindset, oh, we're going to do this training and whatever. But boy, I've been learning from our participants. They do have aspirations. We have a young lady that aspires to be a scheduler for one of the major hospitals in the area. And she did not have a laptop and did not have sufficient skills. She didn't know the Microsoft package, how to schedule and all of that. And she's getting an opportunity to get some of those foundational skills in the program. While we were working on the digital literacy, it gave us a chance to also talk to her about customer service, what your tone should be like on the phone, and how to engage with technology and people at the same time. She's learning those things. We had also been very intentional. The new Boost program is targeting Black, Hispanic, and Native Americans. So the importance of having digital literacy providers that are a cultural match has been successful. So if someone is not able to connect with one of our other partners, we've been able to reassign them to someone from their cultural group and be able to retain them in the program, and so that they can get the skills that we need. So we don't all have to be the same, but to be flexible and be in our roles and help the students, again, where they are to get to where we need them to be, which is to have a more sustainable and viable workforce so our region can continue to be successful.
That's wonderful. Rebecca, to you now.
Great, thank you. I think there's a lot of great stories, right, as we continue to connect with people, but I'll share one of our partners that we work with is the College of Menominee Nations. So Menominee County in our region is almost completely tribal land, but it's also generally one of our counties that has the highest rates of unemployment, and just kind of some struggles that go with, some of the opportunities or lack of opportunities that are there. So we've partnered with the College of Menominee Nation as they're thinking about ways that they can better serve their members. And they've been, looking at ways to do digital literacy. So our ability to have, there was some flexibility with our funding to be able to identify partners, to be training partners in those communities. So, one of those successes is one, it's connecting and outreach with, the Menominee tribe and helping them, implement trainings for that. But we had an opportunity to be there a couple of weeks ago and met Joyce. Fantastic lady, works at one of the casinos in the area and wanted to build, she had this, desire to build her digital skills and didn't know where to go. So her ability now to go into the college and be connected with an individual to work on those training and on those assessments has allowed her now to build the skills that she needs. It's allowed her to move into a new role. She's already gotten a pay raise as a result of that. And she's just driven and motivated on her own now to continue to build those skill sets and to continue to be now a new resource in her work environment to show others how to do things that she wasn't even able to do, 2 or 3 months ago. And it's through this program and those connections where we don't have to, as individuals on this call, be the ones providing the direct training, but it's connecting with those partners and then, and enabling them and empowering them to be able to serve those in their communities that they're connected with.
That's fantastic. So the next question I'm going to ask all of you as well is, what was one lesson learned? I know we shared a lot about lessons learned, but if we had to pick one for each of you, there's also a question from the audience. So I'm going to turn on the microphone for Sharon. Sharon, I'm going to allow you to come off mute to ask your question. And if you're not able to come off mute, then you can also type your question in the chat. But Sharon, go ahead and ask your question, please.
Hi, thank you so much. Sharon Jackson out of Washington, D.C. You know, oftentimes we talk about specific employment programs available for the underserved community, people of color. Are there specific programs in your area that deal with women in particular that are trying to enter the workforce after incarceration?
Vickie, I'll let you maybe take some of the programs specific to the new Boost program, Sharon. You know, Dr. Brie just mentioned the connections that we're making with, you know, the formerly incarcerated and justice involved individuals. The nice thing about our program is that it's highly customizable, right? So we do an initial assessment with individuals and identify where they're at in their own digital learning journey, and then bring the appropriate resources for that individual. Someone might just need a refresher course. Someone might need to know, how do I even turn a computer on? What are all these things, right? So we have the flexibility to meet people where they're at, and be able to bring that kind of that customized training to them. So if they just want just the foundational piece, we can do that. As Dr. Brie said, someone wanted to learn the Microsoft Suite, so we're able to add that piece on as well. So being able to meet people where they're at and with what they need, to be able to move them as quickly as possible towards that success, is one of the really kind of flexible but really unique parts of this training too. But Vickie, I know there's a couple programs available, so I'll let you speak more specifically to that.
Yeah, so specific to women, I think you asked, Sharon. We do, the workforce development boards have a program that's called Windows to Work that goes into the prisons and works with individuals who are at high or medium risk to reoffend, and does some group work with them on behavioral change and then employability skills, and then also work for a year with them upon release for 1 year to help them either with training or employment. So one of the prisons here that's it's not in our area, but it's the closest to our area, and we used to be in that prison. Now another board is Tachita, which is a female prison. And so that is one program that is specifically designed for women. And they even have like mobile welding labs at that institution. And it's amazing how many women like it who never would have considered it. But enjoy it, do it. They also have a mechanical, electromechanical mobile lab. And so that's an opportunity for them to be trained there. And so then when they're released, they have a high demand occupation that pays a good sustainable wage. So they also put a job center, a job lab in some prisons across the state, with this Tachita, the female prison being one of them, so that there's staff on site before they're released to help connect them to employers, do interviews while they're still in the institution, and then have employment upon release. So.
And Sharon, I also wanted to add that the New Boost Hidden Talent Project, we have an online provider called Back to the Basics Tutoring. And she's able to provide digital literacy to people online. So even skilled in telling them how to turn on computers, she's able to go from the phone to get them to the device. So sometimes, I know you asked about the female returning citizens, but we are also partnering with our women's domestic shelter, violence shelter, because some women are not safe to leave their home. but still need training. So we are able to work with folks that, for whatever reason, can't go to a physical facility to get training. And that's been a benefit for our program as well. So I wanted to share that with you.
And Jody, I dropped a couple links in the chat, one specific to the Windows to Work program that Vickie commented on. And then there's another project that's based out of Madison, led by UW-Madison, called the Odyssey Project. And that has some really interesting resources and some of the work that they're doing to support really the whole family as it relates to those that are involved in the justice system. So a couple of resources of things going on in the state of Wisconsin specific.
Perfect. Thank you. And Dr. Brie, if you don't mind putting those links as well that you mentioned for back to the basics and others, so people can follow. So I will go back and ask you all, Rebecca, I'll start with you this time. If you had to pick kind of one, not like a lesson learned that you want to do differently, but a lesson learned that was an insight. You're like, I did not, when we started this program, think that this would be an outcome, or this is something that we'd have had to pay attention to, just as a lesson learned for others that might be interested in doing similar programs in their community.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think we have a lot of lessons that we've learned. But first and foremost, we're truly on that kind of front lines of building a digital literacy ecosystem. And my phone is ringing, so let me not do that anymore. So really that ability to bring the right partners in, but then also understanding the capacity of our partners, right? So a lot of individuals that are really interested in being part of this, but they're serving a lot of other needs as well with the communities that they're already serving, right? So adding on another layer of digital literacy is just adding on, one more thing onto their plate. So I think for us, it's really one of the lessons is that, how do we continue to broaden that capacity for more people to be educated in how to bring digital literacy to the people that they're serving, and making sure that we're building the trust. I think Dr. Brie brought this up. Really, it's about, on paper, it looked really great of we're going to go here and we're going to do this and it's going to be that. And then, there were some more rules that were added, right? So then you had to kind of navigate around different rules. And then there's just, people are dealing with a lot of things. So digital literacy and computer skills, they know are important. But when you have a fire that you're trying to fight, that might just go to the side. So how do you continue to help people from that prospect? I think are some of the lessons that we've learned. But really, I think there's a tremendous amount of interest, not only from individuals, but from organizations on how they can be better connected to providing these services to meet those needs.
Dr. Brie?
Sorry about that. I really saw the importance of having what I call a boundary spanning technology to support the work of organizations that are not formally linked. So we don't have the same reporting systems. You have cybersecurity issues. So there's no way that Bay Area workforce development could give African heritage access to their systems to put in case notes, or so to have that system. Sometimes we meet someone in December and they're really excited about the program. Something happens in their life and they can't start until March. Well, when you have a process manager and you have the data there, you can go in and say, oh, are you ready? Is this a good time for you to start? Part of the hidden talent is that once we find them, we want to keep track of them. And so having a system to see, oh, here are the case notes. This is where they dropped out, or here's their progress. We've had some successful exits. All of that is within the system. and that we can share some of the stories we told today really come from case notes because we're not service providers ourselves. So having that boundary spanning technology that different organizations can contribute their part of the story or their part of the program responsibility, from a volunteer on up to a project manager, I'm seeing the benefit of that.
Yeah. And then Vicky.
Yeah, mine kind of goes along with that a little bit. I think the lesson learned, not just with this grant, but with many, is that it always takes more time than you think it's going to take. And because of the different systems and because of the different requirements, just the importance and the lesson in build in that project manager or build in that extra technical assistance, because they're depending on the grant, depending on the system, depending on the partner organizations, you are dealing with a lot of different issues. And I think it just takes that time, and you need to balance that within the grant. So I think, going forward, having looked, to build more of that in, just to help make things go smoother and have individuals who can focus on that.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned that it's not just workforce development, it's across the board on technical assistance in every area. That we live in a day and age where we say we need the sophistication of analytics and understanding the customer and understanding and being able to track impact over time and the journey of that they're on. All of those things sound fantastic and sound very intuitive. Like we should know if somebody as a hidden talent individual goes to get digital skills training and then ends up in a job and then goes from that job to another job, that's the ROI on that initial training. But if you don't have a system, you never can actually track over time the true ROI of an investment like this in the community, and then you can't advocate for more investments. And ultimately, you're not able to drive that investment back into the community. So I think that that's across the board. And I think a lot of nonprofits and even state and federal institutions are understanding the need to implement and invest in systems and then the people that run these systems. So it's interesting that it's an outcome that you're all seeing. And so I'll give you all. Yeah, go ahead.
I will just say one thing about that. The state system that we have to enter our information in, so the New Boost is getting participant information through that specific grant of New Boost is getting entered in, can track them over time because it connects to the UI system. So if they are working, if there's information, wage information, they can track that. But with that, then becomes a barrier because then you're asking people for their social security numbers. And, there's individuals in specific communities that they don't, that's not something that they are comfortable always giving. So it's a barrier to even getting them to participate. But on the flip side, right, then you can track it and you can show your outcomes. But I think, it's just that balance and understanding that needs to happen if you really want to serve people.
Yeah.
Is there flexibility in some of those other things that you're measuring? Because, it's nice to know, but you're trying to put them in a system and then you require very specific information that can be a barrier to even ever serving them. So,
yeah, well said. Any last words, Dr. Brie, Rebecca, any closing thoughts from you all?
I just want to say to everyone out there is be as flexible and innovative as you possibly can. I understand that there are constraints on maybe some of your rules, but if you have a good ecosystem, we can help each other fill in the gaps and be able to serve people at a level where they can really access the training. And so there's a need for closer partnerships from some of your smaller grassroots organizations to your businesses and to your regional economic groups and to your workforce development board. So there can be I'll call it cross-cultural, cross-organizational understanding.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, thanks for that, David. And thank you to you and your team as well. I think, we're here because EIC has been working with us, right? We're looking to use your platform in a way that even you might not have thought this is how we're going to use our platform. So, your team has been great with respect to working with us, understanding our needs, and looking at bringing those solutions forward as well. So, right, when Vickie talked about kind of your timeline might be a little different, that was one for us. And it was really just because of that innovation and that, understanding how we can better use what's available. So if there's folks listening and they're thinking, well, what should I do or how would I do? It's, I would just offer up. The EIC team has been fantastic to work with, and really supportive and helping us not only learn how we can better use the system, but hearing our needs and helping us figure out a way to make that happen. And then, kind of from the perspective of, okay, so now you did this, our grant is wrapping up, now what? Is that we're really putting in those structures in place for that sustainability. So as we look forward, it's understanding we need to continue finding ways to build capacity and train the trainer opportunities. As more people are trained and comfortable in proctoring North Star digital assessments or, doing those digital literacy trainings, or even being aware of where they can go to get those resources, the more people we're able to connect to. So whether they're employed already, whether they're unemployed, whether there are hidden talent that we're looking to connect with because they don't have any of those traditional connections for the workforce support, the grant has allowed us to put those road right ways in place for us to make sure that we can continue to build on the work that we're doing, and learn from it, right? So what are some new things that we could look at doing? How, once we're maybe outside some of the grant requirements or parameters, how does that allow us to be a little more flexible with some of the approaches that we're taking as well, and still be mindful of the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So, kind of last thoughts is, as you're thinking, if you're listening to this, it's, be open to having new partners, be open to trying something new. We're grateful to Bay Area for being open to trying something new, knowing it might just be for this one grant cycle, but at least now we know, right? So it's that fail forward mentality of how do you learn from what you've, tried, and just look at different ways that you can bring more partners in, because as you have and you strengthen that network, you're also showing that trust to people you're trying to reach out to, because they're seeing who you're working with as well. And you're not just the government here to help, but you are, a community partner that is really interested and invested in your success.
Yeah. Vickie, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I guess I'm just listening, and I think, you guys, what you have said, I, completely agree with and would say also. But I also think, kind of going back to what I said a little bit before, but as even somebody who would fund something or be a partner, and collaborate, that there's a cost to collaboration. It sounds, it's great, it's wonderful to collaborate, but I also feel like there needs to be that foundation it doesn't just happen. It takes time and it takes energy and it takes, people to make it happen. And so, when you're creating a partnership or even coming together, collaborating on a grant, to really look at how do you build that into that process and that grant, because it's so important. And I think we've just been fortunate because New North and Abaxent and Microsoft have worked together, on different projects. So they had those really strong relationships already, that it happened. But if it's a newer partnership or a newer collaboration, I think it really needs to be built in, to make it successful.
Yeah.
But this has been, and I think it is largely due to, the relationship.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you. I think that's a amazing note to end on, that really it comes down to the relationships at the end of the day. And I'm really thankful for you all joining us today as panelists. I also thank our audience for joining us today. As EIC, we are always searching for meaning and purpose for what we do. And it's projects like this that really give us meaning, right? It's cool to like build technology, but if it can actually make a difference in people's lives, then you've attached meaning to your work. And so thank you for involving us in a project like this that's been giving us meaning for what we do every day. And we can't be prouder of the work you're all doing. And to even be a small part of it is very humbling for us. So thank you for joining us today, and hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And thank you
Thank
to the
you.
audience as well.
Thank you.